All right, and welcome back to Forever Broken 2.0 podcast. We're excited to be here. I am Derek Thompson, and I will be one of your semi hosts for the night. And joining me, as always, is Mr. Gabriel Brew.
What's going on, buddy?
I'm here for the radio voice, and that's about what I have. That and a shitty mustache right now because I shaved it. But what do you do, right? So I think tonight, I get to go in blind. I get to do that thing where I have no clue what's going on, and then I look like Donald Trump because I'm orange from the sunlight that's beaming off my face with a white screen behind me. It's pretty cool. And we're gonna have a good time tonight. We're gonna have fun and just see where the night goes. But you have a lot of interesting topics tonight, from my understanding, and we're gonna see where it goes. So. That being said, I'll let you kind of introduce the topic and let's go from there.
Perfect. So I want to talk about a man and a book, and then kind of how it relates to all kinds of stuff from conspiracy theory all the way to like mental health and school. Like it's kind of studied quite a bit. You know what I mean? So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about a book full of whimsical nonsense, implied mockery, and subliminal hints that challenge the expectation of the Victorian society.
The
So it's
Bible.
kind of what?
The Bible.
Incorrect.
Close,
Very incorrect.
close enough. As far as I'm concerned, correct.
Uh, when I tell you the book, you might kind of think of it as a Bible of sorts.
I mean, close enough, I think.
Close enough.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So the Victorian society kind of sets up the time frame of when this book was written. Okay. And it makes fun of like society and lifestyle of the time. So, for an example, in the book, it has stuff that reads like this: "The time has come," the walrus said, "to talk of many things, of shoes and ships, of sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings." Do you recognize that passage?
I genuinely have no idea. And my first thought was, oh gosh, what was that book? It was a poet, and he wrote like the Upside Down Tree and whatnot. But
Oh, Shel Silverstein.
Shel Silverstein. Yeah, that was my first thought hearing that was Shel
Okay.
Silverstein.
Dude, I can totally understand where you're coming from when you hop on that wagon. However, it is incorrect.
Which is what I'm used to in life, to be honest with you.
The man who wrote that is Lewis Carroll, and Lewis Carroll wrote a book called Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and that's where that comes from.
Yeah, we're going down a rabbit hole.
And we are. So,
Makes sense to me.
before we get into Lewis Carroll and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, we need to set the record straight. Lewis Carroll is a made up person. And Lewis Carroll was actually, in fact, a man named Charles Lutwidge Dodson. He was a very super smart and totally introverted mathematician and logician who taught at Christ Church, Oxford. So basically, what you need to imagine is your college calculus professor, but a way funnier person with a hidden life where he wrote like some of the weirdest but most beloved books ever, and that would be Lewis Carroll. Okay. Now, his personal life as Charles is intensely private, but his imagination was anything but. And how the book gets started is it literally began on a boat trip down the Thames River in 1862. He was telling stories to the young children or the young daughters of the dean of the Christ Church, and one of those daughters was Alice Liddell. And after he told her the story, she demanded that he write the story down so he wouldn't forget it. And we can all be grateful that she did. Right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's become one of the most beloved, like, I mean, not just stories, but I mean, movies. I mean, anything you can think of in popular culture, we know about Alice in Wonderland. I mean, there's just so many directions this goes.
Yeah, it's interpreted all the way from reimagined like cartoons,
Yeah, cartoons to
live
the
action movies,
live action movies.
plays, ballets. Like there's so many mediums that this book has influenced in pop culture.
It's created an entire culture itself, which is just crazy to think about.
Yes, sir. So the uh, the book isn't just random chaos as we know it when we watch the movies, right? It's actually a brilliant parody of mathematical logic and Victorian rigidness. So basically, he took all the rules of language and logic and just broke every one of them on purpose, which in today's sense, we would call that a boss move. Kind of just spitting in the face of like an uppity society, right? And that is one of those things for during that time frame is kind of like a very bold thing to do. People, you didn't do that. And speaking of that, when you want to get into like the core philosophies that Carroll was bringing into this book, and I don't know if you can even call it core philosophies, but it's more or less like he was taking certain parts of the Victorian era and mocking them to everybody's face. And
Yeah, it seems to me like it was kind of like modern day comedical things
yeah,
where he was taking issues at the time and then making a joke about it or making light of the situation, because you sit there and we see modern comics today, and traditionally what they're known for now is to take light of the situations at the time, make a joke out of it, and then try to make it something that's more digestible for society to actually go off of, because we're also uptight that it's really hard to laugh about things that are going on in the world that are bad.
right, right. So he basically is like the core philosophy behind all this is he is taking the absolute power of nonsense and he's revealing the ridiculousness of what the time would say was sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which kind of comes through by basically using a girl falling down a rabbit hole to point out that the grown-up Victorian world with its fussy rules and terrible poetry and obsession with etiquette was way more absurd than anything the Mad Hatter could have ever cooked up at a tea party, right?
Yeah, and if we know, anything about all of this with the Mad Hatter thing, was hatters used to use mercury to make hats, and
Hmm.
that led you down a path of just insanity is kind of what it led to. So if we take historically looking at it, when you talk about the Mad Hatter, it's that guy was somebody who was losing sense and track of things because of the chemicals he was around. So just to give people kind of a basis of what that was. I mean, you're talking about somebody who society thought was crazy, and he took that and he made it into something.
Exactly. And so like that will break down like these philosophical themes that he basically attacks throughout this whole book, right? And so the first one would be like logic versus chaos, which basically the entire book is an experiment in the illogic. Every conversation is brilliant, but at the same time, totally frustrating on a failure of communication level. And it kind of just shows how easily language breaks down when arbitrary rules are applied or ignored. And that kind of makes the book fun, right? Just absolute, complete, and total nonsense, and it makes it fun.
Yeah, it's the whimsicalness of it.
Yeah.
It's having no rules.
Right. And then going back to like the Victorian age where you were forced to grow up at a young age, he kind of touches on like the pains of growing up. So throughout the whole book, Alice spends um, the majority of the time constantly changing in size. She's gets big, she gets small, she returns to normal. And throughout the entire book, this process changes multiple times. Um, and not only is it hilarious, but it's an unsettling metaphor for a totally confusing, identity crushing process from going from child to an adult, which at some point in life we all have to go through that, right?
We all do. We all there and go through a repeating cycle of I'm an adult and I really wish I was a child still.
hmm And then he kind of gets into the satire of the Victorian pedantry, um, which skewers the awful moralistic Victorian children's books and the relentless focus on the rote learning. So, like, there's that structured learning. Like, these are the things that you have to learn. These are the time frames you're going to learn them. And by this age, you are considered an adult, and you must act that way. You know. And throughout the book, he makes parodies and jokes of famous poems, and then he kind of makes these funny digs at the verses and how contemporary they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And then we can get into kind of what we were talking about before with like the pop culture. So obviously, this book has withstood the test of time, and it's a pretty much it's a director's playground, if you will. Going from all the different mediums that this book requires to bring it to life. You have the characters such as like the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, Alice, the Queen of Hearts. They kind of require a specific person to play those roles to bring those characters to life because of how vibrant their character is, right? And that kind of gets into like arbitrary authority with the Queen of Hearts, whose kingdom operates entirely on a completely irrational command that of off with her head. You know what I mean? If she doesn't agree with you, you lose your head, and that's kind of where the times were back in the day, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I might be shooting ahead of the book here, but I mean that's kind of where it seems like things have been headed lately, where cultures shoot you in the head if you think outside the box right now, or if you're not thinking on the same timeline. Like everyone just wants to be done with your philosophies and your ideas if you don't think along the same lines of them. And it's a crazy world that we live in right now. So I mean, it still resonates today that he was looking at this back then and seeing that then. So maybe times aren't so different as we go through life.
I wouldn't say the times are different. I would say the
Well, that's what I'm saying. Times don't seem to be different. They seem to be very much in queue with each other. And I think every generation that goes along has this time period where they sit there and they have to reflect on the fact that we have people that will judge you and be decisive of what you do. Like it's just crazy how much in line it still is today, as it was back then. Because I mean, we're looking decades behind.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I wasn't saying that I disagreed with what you're saying. It's more that the like the culture has changed, but like the society hasn't.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I agree with that 100%. Yeah, like things have changed, but they haven't, if you
Right,
will.
right. Like there's been modern there like it things get modernized and technology advances and we have these advancements, but like there's so many similarities from like the past generations, like going all the way back into like the antiquities of like this is what social structure is supposed to look like. These are the constraints and the conformity that you have to mold into, and this is the time frame that you must do it in. And it just the book has held all these years and is so popular, and it still touches so many people and has like a cult following, if you will, because it completely slaps that notion right in the face, um, which I find to be absolutely fantastic. I love that about this book, and it makes it one of my favorite books. And not only one of my favorite books, but some of like the most beloved characters that I like and I enjoy and I take from come from Wonderland, right? And kind of lead you into like the enduring riddle of Wonderland. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're
Before
sitting here
we,
to travel through a world that, is just imagination. We could have fun with it, even though life isn't the same. Like it's a lot less fun when you're going through it in person because we don't look at it the same way. I mean, you already introduced this idea that we go from being small to small to big, and we travel through this world. And I've never thought about it that way, where it's like I have moments where I'm an adult, and then I have moments where I kind of go back to my child life self.
Mhm.
And then I go back and I revert over and over again. I've never thought about that. So it's a fun way to look at it, as opposed to just sitting there going, yeah, like I had to go to work today and now I get to be a kid and I get to play games or I get to do whatever I'm doing.
Right.
And then I'm back to my 9 to 5. I've never thought about it that way. So it's a very fun way to look at how he wrote it and structured it and made real life a whimsical thing.
Right. And that kind of pushes into like that enduring riddle of Wonderland. You know what I mean? So as we've been kind of down this rabbit hole, so to speak, and getting into this deep dive into Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which we're gonna get into further, um, you kind of ask yourself why this book that came about from one man's summer ramblings to his boss's daughters, right, still holds such a massive power over our collective imagination. Um, and it's kind of more than just a dream. It's kind of like this brilliant demolition of like all these rigid rules that we try to impose on the world. Lewis Carroll basically wrote the ultimate book about asking why, you know? Like it focuses more on us questioning language, like laws, authority, and like even like you were just saying, even our own our own size or our own age, right?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
what is a 30-year-old man supposed to act like, right? What is a 18-year-old kid supposed to act like? Like, it forces you to ask those questions and kind of challenge it. Um, but maybe like possibly the greatest legacy is that it validated playfulness and nonsense as like crucial tools for like serious intellectual inquiry. And it shows that the shortest path to the truth is often through absurdity. So, to kind of close out on just like this brief history of the book and who wrote it, and kind of like why it stood the test of time. Um, like maybe an essential takeaway is grown up reality is often just as nonsensical as a tea party with a talking dormouse, a March hare, and a Mad Hatter. And it's a timeless, total blast of genius, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited to see where this goes.
Right. And so,
Because I'm
like,
already super interested because it's very metaphorical, seems like.
right. And it kind of begs the question as a mental health podcast, like, how does this tie into mental health? And what are some of the takeaways of it, and like how it has maintained its popularity and continues to grow from just a summer story, you know what I mean? Any thoughts?
Uh, I mean, just generally based off what we've been talking about, all right, already. Like the Mad Hatter's kind, I think each character plays a personality trait
Hmm.
that we think about, as we watch movies or we watch shows or we read books, um, we don't really think about how that replays a role in our life or how that's a small part of our life. And I think that's kind of the fun in them. It's a distraction from reality for a minute, but at the same time, we're relating to it so much because these are parts and aspects of our life that we're not thinking about. It's a subconscious thought that's there as opposed to something that we're consciously thinking about. And I think that's really where the fun comes in. And that's where we connect so much is that subconsciously we're sitting there going, oh, yeah, I can relate to that. That's part of me. That's, I do this every day where I drift off into a daydream or, sometimes I feel like I'm just not thinking the same thoughts as everybody else, or I'm just this guy that's sitting there trying to be the comedic relief, or well, now I'm the one that's trying to think sense into a situation. So I think each character is playing a role that we play in daily life, and we
Right.
connect to that.
Exactly. And so, with that being said, you touched on a lot of it, but more on a like um, educational based value of this book. If you are in college and you are studying anything from psychology, sociology, some points in like mathematical theory and things like that. Like, this book has become required reading for a lot of institutions, um, which also goes to show the value that it holds to teach us a lot of things about human growth, development, and like the maturity of what sense is. Does that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we're
which is
gonna,
just crazy to think about, but I mean,
yeah.
it kind of just brings back the randomness of his life and our emotions and everything that we have to hold on to.
Hmm.
I mean, you never know where your emotions are going to go. They lead us down different paths.
And then they do, and so I like that you just said that, because this one, as much as I wanted it to be about the characters and the storyline, and I wanted us to spend some time in Wonderland, I rabbit holed down the psychology, or the mental aspect of this book, and I came across where there's been a lot of studies of it, and the studies have been interpreted through philosophical, psychological, and symbolic lenses. They explore reality, identity, language, and consciousness. So the first plunge me down a philosophical interpretation of it, which is basically, it has a lot of rich philosophical undertones, often questioning the nature of reality and perception. Wonderland challenges Alice's understanding of the world, highlighting the subjectivity of experience and the fluidity of logic and language. Carroll manipulates words and meanings to illustrate that concept can be perceived differently by each individual. Reflecting debates on reality and design theory, suggesting that both Wonderland and the real world may be intellectually structured. Alice's struggle with identity and growth mirror philosophical inquiries into selfhood and existence. Got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'd have to think on it. Honestly, it's one of those. That's a very deep philosophical question. It's that's a tough one for sure. I'm just excited to see where I need to know a little bit more where I'm going with it.
So it's basically kind of like, um, Carol is using Alice, saying that she's challenging the the reality of like her Wonderland and her reality. So she's taking people from her reality and placing them into these characters that live in Wonderland, right?
Right.
And her people from reality are represented in a specific way in Wonderland. So like,
So basically, what we're getting at is we're taking the key components of a person's structure, or like we're taking the general personality trait, putting it here, and we're taking the key personality point, and that becomes the character, which is no different than what we do in general day life anyway, because we're sitting there and we judge people, and I don't care who you are, you judge people.
mhm,
Like if you're saying, pretending like you're this almighty being that doesn't judge anyone, you're full of shit, frankly. We're sitting there and we sit there and we characterize people by their traits. And that's what we do. So basically what we're looking at is Alice is taking, hey, this is how I view this person. This is the character they'd be in my story. And by doing that, she's sitting there and finding the traits in each person.
but it's not like the philosophical part isn't just the person and the person's trait. It's also like the structure of societal norms. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah, okay, yeah, now I get where you're going, yeah, so
does
it's
that make sense?
basically, yeah, society has these places for, there's just certain people like that,
Right.
and everyone plays this role in life.
Right. And so, and it's if you really dive into it, each of these characters that are in Wonderland, they represent a specific person in Alice's real world, but they also represent,
A class.
not just a class, but like what a societal expectation is, and it flips it in a reverse. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah.
So like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, okay? It's like if somebody had like that split personality. So now there's two people, but it's the same person, right? And
Right.
the societal norm would be they shouldn't be that fucking stupid or that fucking silly when you ask them a basic question of where am I, right?
Right.
And instead of them answering the question straight up and having a conversation, they talk to each other and they make fun of her for not knowing where she's at and claiming that she's the dumb one, not them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it's challenging that philosophical level of societal norms and like
it's sitting there and flipping everything on its head.
yes, it's really rocking the shit out of everything. And then that's a philosophical interpretation. The other part of that, or another level to that, is a psychological and psychedelic symbolism of everything, right? So this is getting into like what characters or what certain things mean or symbolize within Wonderland. So, from a psychological perspective, Alice in Wonderland can be seen as a journey through altered states of consciousness. The rabbit hole is often linked to entering a psychedelic experience where Alice confronts ego dissolution, cognitive dissonance, and self perception challenges. Characters and surreal events symbolize aspects of the unconscious mind, the ego, and the ID, paralleling the symbolic imagery encountering the hallucinatory or introspective experiences. This interpretation emphasizes self discovery and the exploration of inner thoughts and emotions. Keep up, brother.
I'm sure trying. I love how in depth this is getting because I don't think we've really done this on an episode yet. I
No.
mean, we're diving down that road. I think it's fun, um, for sure. So just let you continue ahead, and
Yeah.
then we're gonna make this a 2-episoder. So we'll dive into this for about 15 more minutes, and then we're gonna take a break, and then come back into it, and we're really gonna get into the deep things of because I can already tell where this is going.
You're welcome, buddy.
I love this. This is so fun.
Somebody had time. Somebody had time.
Yeah, this is incredible. I love this.
All right. So I'm going to give you two more bullet points and a quick synopsis of them. And then we will close it out and come back and really get into it.
Yeah, I love that. That sounds perfect.
Okay. So next on this topic of shits to talk about is literary and social critique. So Carroll's stories also serve as satire reflections of the Victorian society. Characters like the Queen of Hearts critique absolute authority, while the nonsensical rules of Wonderland parody rigid social norms. Carroll incorporated parodies of poems, cultural references, and personal experiences, blending whimsy with subtle commentary on education, politics, and social expectation. The narrative the narrative's playful absurdity allows readers to question social structures and the logic of authority.
So the idea here being that I don't know. This is just me making a bold stretch, but like we have so many people above us that tell us what's normal,
Mm-hmm.
and that shouldn't mean shit to us.
So,
I mean, at the end of the day, because when you sit there and you have an overreaching, not, I'm trying to think of how to word this without getting shot by the FBI or CIA. Uh, when you have an overreaching branch or an overreaching
entity.
entity, yeah, that's a good word. Uh, you really can't sit there and listen to what they're saying. You can't sit there and let them make the basis for what life's supposed to be and what is acceptable. Uh, we let laws govern the rules of what we're supposed to do, but that doesn't always make sense. It doesn't mean you always have to follow that rule. It's like in the government when we were in the Marine Corps, it was like you don't have to follow something that's a
Unlawful
unlawful
order.
order. So it just there's certain things that don't make sense and you don't have to follow.
Right.
And he was pointing to that, where it's like not everything that they tell you has to be done. It doesn't have to be done that way. You have to think logically, go outside your box and think for yourself.
Right.
And I think that's very lacking these days. I think people need to think outside the box, make judgments and decisions for their own, and go from there.
Right. And I mean, it doesn't just begin with like government or
No, not at all. It's very much from your
go,
birth and what you're taught.
but like take that back to like a basic, it's like the basic thought of that. Like when you're growing up and you put on a t-shirt that your mom or your dad doesn't like, what do you get told?
Yeah,
You're not leaving this house wearing that shirt.
And to be fair with that, I may or may not have had a time or two where I should not have worn the shirt I wore. I'm not going to say that I once wore a shirt that said Chance Regal is my bitch that I made by myself, but I may or may not have done that. And my teacher called me out and he goes, Mr. Thompson, do you think that was appropriate for school? And I said, yeah, touche.
It's understandable, but you made that conscious choice and you gained a lesson from it. So instead of being told what you have to do and what's acceptable, you did something, got the experience of it, and realized why that's not acceptable.
Yeah. And
And
the
you made the
experience is
cognitive
where we come
decision
from.
to use that as your lesson instead of being told. And
Yeah,
that's
we have to learn from our decisions and our basis instead of being told, only being told what to do.
right. And
It,
that's
can't
that social critique aspect of that whole
Yeah, you can't
passage.
just sit there and be told what to do and follow it. Sometimes you gotta learn for yourself. There's times when it's a good idea. Like if somebody says don't drink and drive, it's because there's a lot of blood that's been written from that.
With those
You
words.
know what I mean? Yeah. So you've had enough people at that point that have been socially critiqued that, yeah, no, that's commonly
That's a
known.
commonly accepted
Don't do
norm.
that. That's a stupid idea. Don't do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that we're going to bullet point here before we do a little closeout and come back is called a Lacanian and cognitive perspective. So
It's the biggest word I think I've heard you say in a while.
that's not true.
You haven't said
You mean in a while? Okay.
Galidocious in a minute. So I mean, yeah, that was pretty big phrase there.
We'll call it the biggest one for today. Oh, you fuckhead. I just want to point out that I have done very well without stuttering through this bitch at all today.
You've been nailing it today. It's
Thank
so good. I love it.
All right. So, Lacanian and cognitive perspectives. Scholars have analyzed Alice's adventures through Lacanian psychoanalysis, viewing the stories and explorations of language, cognition, and subjectivity. Carroll's manipulation of language and logic demonstrates how intelligence and perception are intertwined, revealing that structured nature of even the infantile world. This approach highlights the role of the signifier in shaping identity and consciousness, offering insights into human cognition beyond traditional specific framework.
I'm trying to decide where to take this because I've been doing some studying for like EMT and whatnot, and I had to go through like general basis of like 0 to 1, age children, um, and just how they develop. So that's kind of where my mind ran with it when you were talking about it. It's
Mhm.
just like how we develop, and it starts at a very young age. And yeah, I'm curious. Like, dive into this a little bit more for me because that's where my brain went.
So I can see where you went that route on more of like a clinical level. I went the other way and took it to it doesn't matter whether you're an infant or an elder or
Mhm.
anywhere between. They kind of touch on this as in like the framework that your mind is in when you're awake or cognizant, or when you're asleep and dreaming.
Gotcha.
That's where I went with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so
Right.
like your cognitive thoughts are like when you're awake, and it's when you're learning and you're doing all these social norms, right?
Yeah, I think that's why I went with the like 0 to 1. Like I just read about
Mhm.
it. I did a bunch of studying on it, and it was like none of that comes. It's not. It's less so learned so much as it's just there. It's
Mhm.
naturally occurring
Instinct.
versus yeah, it's naturally occurring versus it's a learned behavior.
Mhm.
So I think that's where my mind was with it.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say that probably has it has a place among this to a certain extent.
So you're kind of saying we have like cognizant thinking, and then we have, well, I mean,
So
non.
you have your cognizant thinking, your cognizant learning, and your cognizant behaviors, right?
Yeah, and then you have the opposite of that, which is just like our part of our brain that just kind of does its own thing, and we're
Mhm. So where my mind went, and you're getting very very close to where I went with this, is that when you're cognizant, that's when you're learning the norms. You're practicing the things that you inherently
Mhm.
instinctually know to do. But when you go to a different altered state of thinking, such as your dreams, or in this case, Wonderland, you can flip all that in your mind because the rules don't apply anymore.
Right.
And then you can play with these ideas in your dreams, or your subconscious plays with these ideas in your mind, like, why, when I'm awake, do I have to behave this way when it's so much fun to behave this way?
Yeah, we get to play with the reality. We get to change the rules
You
of
manipulate it to a
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, which is absolutely crazy actually, because I literally just talked with my girlfriend Candace about this, and I had a dream the other night. I literally died in my dream,
Mhm.
and I don't know what the deal is. I think like statistically, they show that when you die in a dream, you typically wake up right before you die. I didn't have that. I died.
You were gone.
I was gone. I got CPR. I came back to from that and then was living like in a completely different manner. So, I mean, just kind of looking at this from that aspect, it was like I got the chance to be resurrected and then start living a new life. So it was me playing with the idea of if I get a chance to restart, what would I do?
Mhm. And I think that's part of like what this bullet point is kind of saying, like somewhere in your subconscious you've had that thought of like, in reality, if this was to happen and I had a second chance, how would I do it? And then subconsciously in your sleep, your mind played it out in
Yeah,
your wonderland.
yeah, absolutely. That's what I think it was, and it was just the craziest thing on the planet to me, man. Like yeah, I just yeah, it messed with me for about a week. It's been about a week
Mhm.
now, and it's just been messing with me.
Yeah. I would like to point out though that like when I'm erect, I live a completely different life myself.
I'd cryoprism for at least 8 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
yeah, it was well played. Well played.
Thank you. I do what I can.
You nailed it.
And I did. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now.
Yeah, I think we leave it there and then we move on and then we dive back into this in the next episode and we go from there. But I love it. This is very interesting. I can't wait to see where this goes next, honestly. Like, I'm super excited because I haven't ever taken the time to break like things like this down because I always knew there was like that social mental part of the book and the shows and the movies. Like, you can, I mean, I think it's very obvious, but
Yeah.
I don't think any of us really want to sit and think about it because we're just trying to enjoy the moment. We've already dove into that part of it where we're like, I'm escaping reality.
Mhm.
And that's what he was so good at.
Yeah.
And that's why he wrote the book at the same time, was to give you a chance to escape from reality. So it's very interesting.
It is. And then the fun thing is too is where we were talking about how he kind of makes fun of like the contemporary and Victorian poetry and Victorian art and Victorian mannerisms. Go back and watch that movie now, or go back and reread that book now, and watch how much more you pick up on it. Because I did.
How much different you see it.
Because I did, and when you get to certain parts of the book or the movie, you can see where certain parts of that time that he was writing it in are being completely mocked. You know what I mean?
Which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, and it's an absolute masterclass in taking something and just bitch slapping everything what everybody thinks is proper right across the face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love it.
And that's just my style. So why wouldn't we talk about it?
Yeah, so we're going to keep diving into it this next episode. And that being said, I love you guys. You are incredible. And I cannot be more appreciative of you. Please go ahead, like, subscribe, do your thing. I don't know why I popped that up. That was weird. But like, subscribe, do your thing. Follow us where we are. And if you enjoy this, please go ahead, share it. Make sure you're having fun with it. And we're going to keep coming back to entertain you guys. We apologize for being gone for 2 weeks. I've been super busy. That's my fault. I've been just studying my ass off and doing continuing education. So my bad. Trying to learn to be better at what I do. And I love you guys. Thank you. And from me and Gabe, have a good night.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
Toodaloo, buddy.
Bye.